trying hard just to make us all vanish. I suggest they put a flag on a whole nother planet. Black girl magic, y'all can't stand it, y'all can't ban it. Made out like a bandit. They've been trying hard just to make us all vanish. I suggest they put a flag on a whole nother planet. Black girl magic, y'all can't stand it, y'all can't ban it. Made out like a bandit. They've been trying hard just to make us all vanish. I suggest they put a flag on a whole nother planet. Black girl magic, y'all can't stand it, y'all can't ban it. Made out like a bandit. They've been trying hard just to make us all vanish. I suggest they put a flag on a whole nother planet.
I'm Leo Sunfire.
And I'm Dr. Love.
Welcome to the Black Portal Power, where we center the Black experience. Open your mind,
For your soul.
for the portal is open. Welcome, 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 Black Portal Power listeners.
Yes, welcome back, y'all.
We are back today to get you some more knowledge and some more experience, because the portal's always open.
Always open.
Always, always. Our topic today is going to be a little controversial, but enlightening all at the same time.
Yes, that's always our goal,
Yeah,
to enlighten.
absolutely.
Just shining a light in an area that we all talk about, experience, but shining some light in these areas. And hopefully you leave feeling enlightened, lifted, higher.
Knowledgeable too, I hope.
right.
That's one of my things, But our topic today is about spirituality versus religion.
Ooh, Leo, can I ask why there's a verses there? Why I think about the verses we've been watching all summer long that kept us during quarantine.
We are not the same. That's why.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a difference in the two. So there has to be a separation and addressing of the difference in the two, so that people can have a clear-cut understanding of how it has impacted our people, Black people. I have a little clip that I want to play to get started, and it is from the renowned psychiatrist and author of the ISIS paper, Frances Cress Wellings.
Black people are the mothers and fathers of everybody on this planet. The first people to know about God. The first people to be mathematicians, architects, scientists, philosophers, to know about astronomy. But when the people who classify themselves as white started taking over, they knew of the critical importance in the area of religion, of telling people, the whole world of colored people, that God was white. Now that was, I say, a critically important step. And sometimes I give the people who run white supremacy some grades. They can get A+. Because that was a very strategic move.
And there you have it.
So much in that. So much in that. Let's see, where do we begin? Maybe we begin with, how about a little background on the speaker there?
Frances Cress Wellings. Okay, so basically she is, I said it before, a renowned psychiatrist. She has done so much for the psychiatric or mental health industry, that not just for Blacks but everybody, to get people to understand the importance of mental health and how the mental illness impacts people's lives. She has wrote the ISIS paper, about that, and how that has really impacted our lives as far as Black people is where we stand in our society, how we conduct ourselves, how we need to get out of this sleep, I'm gonna call it, that the slumber that we have been under, the spell that we've been under from white supremacy. She has battled and won several times during her life with people who call themselves renowned informationists, and she has crushed them with knowledge that she has of mental health and how it impacts, because people are afraid of discussing mental health, but there's so much illness out here of the mind that we need to start addressing it. I think it'll lead us to better ourselves and repair ourselves from all the other hurts and pains that we have suffered through within our society. So, but you go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, it seems like then understanding how the two are not the same, religion and spirituality.
Absolutely.
And how, I see their connection in some really important ways, but we've got a lot to unpack, it sounds like today. So I'm here for the journey. So her background being in psychiatry, and in the ways in which our mental health are impacted by all of these things that we do in our daily lived experiences, including, how we practice religion. Absolutely. So let's define religion. What is religion?
Okay, so religion is a strong belief in a supernatural power or powers that control human destiny, an institution to express beliefs in a divine power relating to clergy and bounded by monastic vows. That's religion. That's the definition according to etymology of religion. Now I can give you the definition of spirituality.
Yeah, let's see how they compare and contrast.
Spirituality is a property or income owned by the church, believe it or not, and is concerned with the things of the spirit. So basically, you have internal and external.
So spirituality is something that's owned by the church?
That's what etymology says. Yes.
Interesting, because I see them.
Or property or income owned by the church.
Spirituality
absolutely.
Is a property
That's
or
what
income?
Absolutely, that's what it says. So it's and it's concerned with the things of the spirit. So you can correlate the two, but they are completely separate because.
So let me ask this, because when I think of religion, I think about practices or customs that you do with relation to faith, really kind of in line with the definition that you provided for religion. Spirituality is beyond those practices and customs. I think spirituality allows us to go beyond, so if our practices and our customs include going to a physical building, spirituality defines all of those spiritual, those physical constraints, those physical means of practicing your faith. So I was really intrigued by that definition, of spirituality, which seems to be almost, in my mind, too confounding, right? If it's about income that's driven from religion or the institutions that might own it. So help me to unpack that, Leo.
About the income and of the church.
Well, in terms of the definition of spirituality.
Well, you're right when you say that it negates the constrictions of being inside of a building or something like that. But you also have to remember that religion has it tapped into part of spirituality. So that's how it that was derived from spirituality, and they own the financials of it. According to etymology, the property or income owned by the church. So
is a definition of spirituality, not religion.
Not religion. Oh. So religion was derived from spirituality, because before there was religion, there was spirituality. According to all African, where we all come from, cultures, tribal ceremonies and things like that. Those were considered spiritual I don't want to call them rituals, but they can be called rituals or ceremonies to such things like that. They weren't called religion. Religion came from Western civilization, changing what we call spirituality into a business.
And see, and that's, I guess, because that's where I'm confused, is that even as you're defining, even in terms of African culture, given that we are all African, right? So we keep pushing that point, y'all, so that we remember that in terms of human origins, the oldest human remains were found in the continent of Africa. So we are all, indigenous to Africa. That is where we've all been birthed from. But that when I think about spirituality, even what you're describing and defining with respect to African practices and, rituals, that is a religious practice, that religion is the sort of practice, the ways in which we outwardly perform this idea of a belief in a higher being. But then you can transcend into the spiritual end of it that defies all of those, not necessarily defies, but it maybe defies is a good word. It really allows us to not use just those practices as a way of elevating on a higher level spiritually.
I get what you're saying. So let me, I guess, make it more clear.
Sure.
So spirituality, when you have ceremonies and traditions and things like that, that is you executing a particular dance or mantra, whatever you want to, however they practice it. When you talk about religion, you have constraints and powers that want to control the destiny within the with it being institutionalized. That is the difference. Where you have freedom on one side and then constraint and control on the other.
So freedom on the spiritual end, constraints on the religious end.
Absolutely. So that's how it played on the minds of the black people. During the times of slavery is where it impacted black people the most here in America. Because we didn't even have access to the books to even read, to know what was being taught. So when the slaves were being taught, they were being taught through words given to someone else to tell them what to believe. So our spirituality has always existed, but when we became religious within our culture, it was through the minds of someone else and the rituals and the practices of someone else. And we've leaned into that our whole lives. I mean, generation after generation after generation of people just completely engulfed in religion and not spirituality, negating and understanding the difference between God and religion. It's man versus God for me. I can't speak for anyone else, but that's what I see, or is man versus God. You put all your eggs in one basket, you get in spirituality, you're dealing with the spirit of God. Mm-hmm. And then when you get religion, it's been reduced down to the spirit of man, what man says, what man does, and how you should operate and function through a structure that they've designed.
And so I want us to, because again, I know we're going to be delving into this the whole show. I want to, just based on, everything you're touching on now in terms of how we went from sort of these spiritual practices of, again, the utilizing sort of our connection with God, our spiritual connection with God, to religion, where now we have constraints and conformity centered around that even with African traditions and cultures, how we adapted that in very important ways. When I think about the birth of even the church, unique, when I'm thinking about like AME churches and, these churches where we were, not allowed to practice in the same spaces with whites that we've always developed a unique way of embracing that spirituality, of adapting that spirituality even into these sort of religious confounds. So when I think about the ways in which we use, like you were talking before about not having the ability to read in the languages that, once we were stolen from Africa, being able to read, traditional Bibles, but the ways in which we communicated through our dance, through harmony and beat, and even with them being from different tribes, utilizing that as a way of communicating. And I just think about the essence of that and the spiritual power that it took to endure such a horrible tragedy.
Yes, but the key word, the operative word, is spiritual. We cannot forget that is the only thing that we have in common amongst tribes, amongst our nations, countries, is spirit
and race. These constructs of race,
Absolutely.
right? That happened over time.
Absolutely. Well, we're gonna take a break, and when we come back, we're gonna get a little bit deeper into this when it pertains to mental health. And don't forget to get your notebooks out.
You're listening to Black Portal Power on BSB Radio.
There is nothing more beautiful than spiritual union. Two souls that come together to destroy and kill the illusion of time and space and separation between the Creator and her creation. Love is the joy that leads to salvation, ascension and divine elevation. I ain't trying to waste your time. I just wanna elevate your mind. Meditate and shine. Elevate your mind. I ain't trying to waste your time. I just wanna elevate your mind. Meditate and shine. Elevate your mind. Elevate your mind. Open up your heart chakra. 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 Yeah. I be on time when the time's right. Kundalini rise, get your spine right. Elevate your mind so you shine bright. Forget about your sign, you divine light. Maybe we can elevate. Maybe we can levitate. Maybe we should meditate. Inhale and exhale. That's how we medicate. I ain't trying to waste your time. I just wanna elevate your mind. Meditate and shine. Elevate your mind. I ain't trying to waste your time. I just wanna elevate your mind. Meditate and shine. Elevate your mind.
Elevate your mind. Open up your heart chakra. Elevate your mind. Open up your heart chakra. Elevate your mind. Open up your heart chakra. Elevate your mind. Open up your. If we come together, hearts wide open, it's a better, sweeter view, sweeter view. Letting go of the illusion, elevate through the conclusion into truth. Maybe we should meditate. Inhale and exhale, that's how we medicate.
I ain't trying to waste your time. I just wanna elevate your mind. Meditate and shine. Elevate your mind. I ain't trying to waste your time. I just wanna elevate your mind. Meditate and shine. Elevate your mind.
we're back.
Yes. So we're delving into, a topic that really I think is absolutely necessary. It can also invoke debate. But again, it's my understanding of the differences between these two concepts, Leo, right? That again, religion is sort of these practices and customs that we might engage in to connect with God, where spirituality is when we realize that those customs, those practices were just, if anything, a vehicle or tool to help us to connect spiritually in a way, so I think of it like riding a bike, right? And that you got to have the training wheels on at first, maybe, and that's where religion comes in. And then the training wheels can come off after a while and you can just freestyle ride, without relying so much on the customs and on the practices, if you will. If I think of it in terms of just going to church, praying, especially if those are monotonous routine things, as opposed to, wow, this is really the way in which I connect with this with the higher being. And so when I think of it in that way, I think of what can be the beauties of religion, but also religion has started more wars and divisions than just about anything else. Absolutely. And I think that's where you were going, really talking about how one person's adaptation of a religious practice says you have to conform in this way. Another group may say you have to conform in this way, losing sight of the fact that we are all one. And so if I'm using religion to control or dominate, that's not of God. That is not a God thing, right?
Well. That's how we want to realize some things right there. It is not of God when you practice a religion ritual that constrains you to an ideal and not the light, the Spirit of God. We cannot negate that all of this was it all began because of the Spirit of God. It was to invoke it and receive it, have it, use it, and not put it on in a box and say you use it when I say, or you got to come through me in order to utilize this. You have people that have lost homes paying into church. Tithes, they can't pay their own bills because they have bought into the kingdom of heaven that the pastor has convinced them that's the only way they can receive it. You have people that have lost homes and they can't, they've lost so much paying into this financially, paying into this institution that never, they promised them a lot but never gave them anything. It's foolishness in my eye, but in other people's minds, that is their only way of understanding it. That's their only way of knowing God or having access to God.
And I think it's, again, it's the sort of that downside and detriment to religious practices that all of us as human beings, because this is the thing, we are a body, so we have a physical being, and then we're also spiritual beings at the same time. The religion becomes easy because it allows for these physical practices, something that I can do day in and day out. I don't really have to think on a higher level, deeper level to do them.
Now you get into
and then
something.
Spirituality is something else. And I also think about the ways in which then we would, to touch on what you are talking about now and even introduced at the beginning, how racism, right, this division of racism allowed for sort of this really sort of westernized approach, or this colonized approach, I should say, because whether it was colonization here or in other places, this colonizer approach, then religion becomes a tool of division, a tool of control, a tool of manipulation when we are trying to attach that to God. But that can happen with any practice, with anything, and the ways in which that can affect mental health is even another step, especially if we believe that those two are connected, that physical, spiritual, that connection, that my only way to access God is through these physical even though we understand and maybe should know that God is spirit, right?
Most people don't. Most people, the only example they have of God is church. The only example they have of knowing spirituality is religion. So they don't have an ideal of what spirituality looks like outside of the constraints of church and religion. I mean, for example, I'll just say this: it's the conceptualized. It is conceptualized as the organized system of beliefs, practices, and rituals and symbols. And blacks and women are the more religious of anybody in our most religious of anybody in our population. They are more disproportionately impacted by health conditions and disparities or health inequalities. And they are more likely to use religious beliefs to facilitate problem solving, to alleviate the negative emotional consequences of stressful life circumstances.
So let's really dig into that, right? And so when you think about why religion might be so important, especially to the groups who experience a lot of trauma and pain in life, and this becomes a way of dealing with that, and especially when you don't have as many resources and tools to deal with it otherwise. I want to push back a little bit and say, has the church evolved in recognizing this?
No. I would say quite the opposite.
So, and Leo won't mind me pushing in this way, because I think, in terms of our connections to physical churches are very different, where I've kind of continued in that realm pretty much from my childhood on, and you haven't, that the way in which you do fellowship is outside of the constraints of, those physical beings or physical buildings, if you will. And what I've seen is just that, because these groups, when you think about Black people and women really being at the forefront, like you said, arguably the most religious people, I've also seen where the church has evolved because of that. And I've had this beautiful seat to see where we've seen growth in that, sort of the traditional ways that you and I may have experienced church growing up, where, you always had a building fund and maybe not a lot of building going on and things like that. I think that is very separate from the true intent of the church and movement away from that, because what happens is you will have generations and generations of folks who are saying, we're not making movement, we're not making progress, we've got to do it different. I remember times traditionally where women weren't speakers, weren't, sort of leading sermons and things like that. That's very much so not the case, where I see churches now being very transparent, where you have open records of what's being given and then what's going out and where it's going to. So I've got to see the beauty of that. Am I saying that there's not still problems with the ways in which we do organized religion? Absolutely not. But I've certainly seen evolvement. And I also want to just credit us as a people, African Americans as a people, especially when you think about this, these changes in ways in which we access spirituality from, Africa to America, that we've always maintained we could not have survived the atrocities of that brutality had it not been for our spiritual strength and wherewithal. So I think that we figured out ways to push back. Am I saying that that religion, just like anything else, can be used as a tool of manipulation, a tool of control? Absolutely. But I've certainly seen some gains happening there to move us away from those horrible, practices, if you will.
Okay, I could dig that, but I'm going to say this. 501c3, that is a business code for church, meaning that it is a business. And within the business, you're going to have all of these things, the checks and balances that have to happen in order for the business to remain successful. Meaning they're not going to take care of your spiritual needs if their business is going to be impacted by that. Spirituality, again, is something that we as African, or I'm going to say my melanated, copper-colored people have always had spirituality before religion became a business. So if you're in within the religion constraints and you're relying on that to uplift you spiritually, then you're relying on someone who never will have your best interest at heart, because it's a business. And if their business is impacted by you're not paying into it, if their business is impacted, let me go. I'm gonna say his name is Joel Osteen. Was that his name? Okay, so a few years ago we had a flood in Texas, and this man has a mega church. I mean, mega, and he wouldn't let not just his parishioners, but the people that were surrounded in the area go into this church for safety, because it was a business.
So let me say this, because I got a lot of pushbacks on this, and because Leo, Sunfire, and I are very, very connected, this is what we do. So you said a lot there. So okay. 501c3, if I understand that status, that's a nonprofit status. So they can't be profit driven. Any company that has that entity has that's the point, is that they're supposed to be nonprofit. And I think what we're talking about now, there are government controls over any entity that defines churches as businesses. I don't think that churches started off saying we want to be defined as a business. That is a government decision. And what's interesting is this idea of separation from church and state. And so now with that separation, the state is not going to see the church as a spiritual house. It is going to make it confined just like any other business. And now it has to say, well, I'm a nonprofit status. And then they have to prove that we are not taking in anything that allows us to gain profit. This is those folks, those members, their decisions to contribute into this. So whatever efforts they want to do outreach in, if they want a larger building because they have a lot of members, that's something totally right. That's what they have to report. Why they have to report that they have to have accurate bookkeeping to show that they are not profit driven. Then you mentioned a well-known pastor so let me kind of disentangle that. What pastors' revenues are, if they write books, if they do speaking engagements, that is their revenue. That is not the church's revenue. So those are two separate entities. And again, us unpacking these foundations about how churches have to operate because of, how they're recognized by state and local governments. And then having to use that 501(c)(3) status to say we are not a business entity that is profit driven. And then now you touched into a whole nother realm where we have individuals who have become well known because of the messages that they share. And then that can become, again, their own revenue streams if they're writing books, if they are, doing speaking engagements as a person, not necessarily as that church. And then because they are public figures, now we get to disseminate, right? Or we get to make calls about why did they do this? Why did they do that? I think it goes back to the point you were making earlier about religion, right? If I'm looking at customs and practices and this is the way that I do this, and I'm using now my pastors and priests is the only way I can connect to God. Well, that's something different because people are fallible. I don't care how amazing you are, and that even in our spiritual best, we are still people. We are still fallible. And so the reason why religion becomes this faulty ground is because, like you said, it's the spirit of man
versus God,
versus the spirituality, which is the spirit of God. And so people will let us down, no doubt about it. And we will sometimes sit in a seat of judgment based on, well, I would have done this differently, or I would have done that differently. And that we are human beings. And so we're going to make decisions. We're going to make calls on stuff based on what we think is best in that moment. Even if we have to give others grace just like we would want others to give us, that maybe you saw it differently or you experienced it differently. And if I had that purview, I might have done it differently. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And you're absolutely right in all the things that you just said. That the man is fallible, and you shouldn't be relying on a man to give you your spiritual enlightenment. That is where God comes in. That is what separates religion and spirituality. And most people, again, don't realize that going into situations. They go into their spiritual awareness through church. And church and man will let you down every single time. Every time, because they're fallible. So why rely on the construction of a building and a man that is giving you the word? Because this is the mental illness that white people have put on black people from conception of during slavery times, is that allowing someone else to deliver the message to you through their words, through their buildings, through their structure, their constraints. That is the difference between being free spiritually and religion. So if you're saying that religion is a man is fallible, I agree with you 1,000%. But we gotta take a break. And we're gonna get back on this as soon as we come back. You are listening to Black Portal Power on BSB Radio.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Yeah. Barack Obama looking at me. What's up? What's up? I'm hiring hands, inspiring fans. I'm giving out jobs. I'm sketching up plans. Police, they beat me. We storm the same streets. We storm the same block. Won't stop till we free. Think it was possible till we accomplished it. Now we accomplices. Now we out popping shit. I'm getting money. The kids getting money. I'm dropping racks and racks. In church on a Sunday. I get it back to back. Go to work on a Monday. White on white tracksuit. Cause you know who run it. We was hungover. South Beach was too sunny. Yo. We out in Joburg. No sleep cause we clubbed it. Catch me out in Europe with my black skin. Fighting for freedom, my nigga. Ain't no more asking. Judge ain't never forget him for when it was trapped. In that pussy wet like a dolphin. Baby, I'm a king, I'm a god, a thug. My verses will live if I die from slugs. That shit is power, man, that shit is love. No, you cannot buy that from no fucking club. I'm a baptized niggas, let's get baptized. I'm a baptized niggas, let's get baptized. About to baptized niggas, let's get baptized. I'm a baptized niggas, let's get baptized.
She said it's cold inside that water, made her nipples hard. That's that liquor talking, sipping gin and reading the book of Genesis just before in the beginning and shit. Pride, lies, deceit, blah blah, sinning and shit. Adam and Eve, dumbass, apple eating thumb ass. Hit the gas and hit the gas. At the sex fifth with a religious sect to grab gifts. How you get money and act as if poverty's past tense? We see bad shit happens, but what happens to bad shit? You need your ass whipped. Friendship, missionary, Beulah Hill Baptist. Not fit county doing peyotes from a cactus. Alabaster flows out in Cali with some Calabasas hoes. Hella bad, put your ass up on my nose. With a sack of bottom, just a sack of bones. Sacrificial Lamborghini, do the dash upon the road. Throw a stone like David, I got that Tom Brady on. In a Navy gun, case to joint. Case and point the pistol at your neighbor. Look at your neighbor and say neighbor, stack up all your paper, pray for me, I say a prayer for you, be not forsaken, jump in the lake, let the water run over your face. We baptize people, now they breathtaking, nigga, wait, I'm about to
baptize niggas, let's get baptized. I'm a baptized niggas, let's get baptized. About to baptize niggas, let's get baptized. I'm a baptized niggas, let's get
made in his image. I even work in mysterious ways. See, I've been over my lyrical phase. I'd rather be potent. Burning a bush like Moses. Put on my back like cobras. Eat the forbidden fruit, girl. It's a lot more I can show ya. Kicking that simple shit like Yoda. Let y'all think it over. Fresh out the fire, up in the go. Officer pull you over. Killing a nigga in cold blood. Get him a Christmas bonus. Wasn't until it went digital that you finally start taking notice. Now you wanna be delivered, huh? Guess who pulling up the dinner, huh? Got me cynical like a Tyson punch for $1 million. Is it worth what you really giving up? Got my heart broke by a Taurus when they found a Gemini with a bigger butt and only God can judge, and that's only if he still give a fuck. Water the wine, it started to fine, but now it tastes a little bitter, huh? A lot of these guys just live in the skies, I'm shining the light, the jig is up. Everybody know Jesus hang with the hoes, killers, and the criminals. Go ahead, tilt your head back, hold your breath for the ritual. Please fall down on me.
Skies and the earth. Thou shalt live or die. Thou shalt bless or curse. Go forth until forever.
And we're back. So I was saying before we left, we were getting into the difference between man and the
church building, if you will, and so how fallible those things
Absolutely.
can be if it's totally driven by just this religious practice. And I think that sometimes we may assume that that's kind of, especially if that was our experience growing up, what the church was and what it meant to us. I do think that we've always embraced this idea of spirituality because people have to exist Monday through Saturday, if they attend church on Sunday, for instance, and that they figure out ways that reading, for instance, from a Christian standpoint, reading the Bible for themselves, and how much that is encouraged in the church today. Again, not to say that we don't still maybe have those who use religion as a tool of control or manipulation or divisiveness, but we live in an information age and where people are encouraged. I think of a scripture that says, study to show yourself approved, right? Mm-hmm. That when done in the spirit, from this aspect of spirituality, that learning sort of those basic things, like to pray or to read, and to understand and gain knowledge for yourself. I think that's something that can be so certainly encouraged, that these two things don't have to counter one another necessarily. And in the right atmosphere, in the right space, that's what happens. I think about fellowship on any level, whether you're talking about fellowship on a day of the week that you meet with others who are like-minded people, and whether you're doing that one-on-one with another person, that it's all about sort of that growth and that fellowship and that spiritual growth and that spiritual journey, knowing that your journey is your own, that you draw strength from being around others who are like-minded, but not that is the vehicle by which, you know what I mean? And I think for those who may be newer in their faiths, newer in their journeys, that you do draw strength from others and from those learning those practices, but that it doesn't have to mean you are just religious, right? And that you get stuck there, because that's going to let you down. And I don't, you said this at the onset, that religion is all about spirit of man, what we can do in our own power, our own being, but spirituality is something that allows you to evolve even more.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that when you speak on spirit or spirituality, you even when you speak on it, your voice lifts. You're more excitable about saying it, because it is something that is within God. It is the God in you speaking through, versus when you're discussing religion, it's more of a lower tone. And I mean, I'm listening through our conversation and how it's impacting just this, because seeking God through spirit is, you learning to breathe and meditate, and you becoming one with nature and the universe, and you're appreciating and accepting all the things that God has created, the Most High has created, and it's the essence of spirituality that these things are, and it lifts you up no matter how you're addressing it. No one wants to talk about spirit in a low tone. So that's why you always, it gets in your heart, no matter if you try to negate it or not. It's still within you because it's God speaking through you. It's like,
and so religion doesn't, for some people who are not connected in that way, then this, I
it's just
equate it to riding a bike, right? That you get that you have to have those, for some, having those training wheels on to sort of introduce you to that, but then learning that journey, and I don't care what faith it is, but having that awareness, right? Through the physical, your physical being, through being, human. And then that, again, if religion serves any a tool, it becomes a tool, if you will, of developing that spiritual growth. I don't think it has to always be negative, or I think that folks who only want to do it that way, folks who feel like this part makes more sense to me because this is something I can practice and do repetitively and it makes me feel good in the moment. And even when it ain't serving me, then I'll just, I'm just going to abort the whole idea of spirituality. That I can't think of one. And again, I don't study religions and know about all of the diverse religions that exist in the world. But for people seeking that they are seeking a way to develop spiritually. And that, if anything, we just don't want to get stuck in religious practices that don't involve spiritual growth.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And the division of different religions, if you want to call it that, is what causes division within our communities, our people. Yeah. I mean, we cannot stop thinking about the fact that within Christianity, I can name at least 5 or 6 different sectors of Christianity. I mean, we got Baptist, Episcopalian, Methodist,
Kojic.
I mean, all of these people are within one. They're reading the same book and they're learning the same things, but yet they cannot unite within themselves spiritually because they are religiously engulfed in this.
And I think that, again, when I think about today's standards and where you see a lot of churches not putting those kind of denominations on their titles because they understand the divisions that they've caused, whether, that they're, regardless of their intent, that, again, Christianity is probably the one that most people practice because it comes in all these various forms, from being Catholic all the way through to being Baptist, if you will. And so there's something there, that people gravitate to and hold on to. But then if they get caught up in these religious customs of this is the only way to access God, this is the only way to be pleasing to God, then this is where we get stuck and we get bound. And now it's like, you're not doing it right. You're not doing your faith right, or your belief system right, because that, it allows you to, be confined and constrained in a way that could be unhealthy for you mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and even physically. And again, that's the fallibility of people, right? And us all as people. And if we use something even as precious as this avenue by which people can develop their spiritual life and grow in their spiritual awareness and understanding of who they are and whose they are, this is when it can be problematic. But that, again, as long as you have humans involved in it, that's a potential and a possibility. But I think that because of the hurts that come from that, and because they are well documented and they are long lasting, that I think people have really worked very hard to defy that and to move beyond that. And I've seen that in my own journey, where, taking denominations off, if you will, in terms of those sects of Christianity, making sure that we figure out ways of being very inclusive, because if God is love, right? How do we say we love God and don't love people? And so getting away from some of these barriers that religion, again, when you think about so many wars that have been started around religion and the ways in which we can use even something that is supposed to help us develop spiritually and help us grow and evolve spiritually, use it as a divisive mechanism or weapon, if you will, is very problematic. But I think there's also this awareness that it can be just that, and trying to erode that, trying to to undo that, I think has been a big effort and a big push.
Well, one of the hardest parts about it is that we got, at least on this earth, 5, maybe 6 generations of people still alive. I mean, you got people from 100 years old all the way down to newborn. So you got all these different concepts to fight against, and all dealing with what? Religion. Not the Spirit of God, because they weren't teaching that 100 years ago. They weren't teaching you to understand, to separate yourself out of the religious part of it. They were teaching you to obey and to participate in the structure of religion, church. And I gotta say this, because I don't want anybody that are church people to think that I'm Satan, because I ain't Satan. But I am gonna say this: there is so much more beyond the church. There's so much more beyond the constraints and constrictions of church and religion. You have to seek something greater, because there is greater than.
And I
out
think
there.
it depends on what our definition of church is, right? And that one of the things I was always taught is that we are the church, individuals, right? That we come together as a collective to draw on that strength from one another. Again, that joining of like-minded people. But again, I was introduced to this idea that the church is not just that physical building. It's who you are and what you bring into that space, that you are supposed to bring your spirit into that space. You're supposed to be a part of this from beginning to end, that it wasn't a solo dominated kind of thing. I think that there's sort of those traditional churches that kind of, have taught that, but I think that the pushback against that and recognizing that is problematic, and here's what it can cause, I mean, that becomes apparent for some really quickly. And like you said, we have generations of people who were taught one way to do it, but I do think that the pushback against that has been so broad and so vast. I mean, I just think about even today, like you mentioning where situations happen where people become aware of it and the pushback is real, and that pushback causing change in a lot of ways. I think about, when you were talking before about like not teaching us about God and about the Spirit of God, and I'll use an example of Azusa, right, where sort of this movement around God as spirit and how God's spirit affects us, and that we don't have to sort of worship and practice the way we usually did. But I'm not gonna dig all into that, but that there have even been movements within the church to say, we've got to do this thing on a higher plane.
Well, because there's so many people leaving the church. There's so many people saying, nah, not for me no more. Yeah. My grandmother and grandmother and my mom, they were wrong. I'm out. I'm deuces.
I don't want to do that.
I'm not doing that, because it got them absolutely nowhere. And there's so many people that are enlightened. Mm-hmm. Well, let me give you some information about being learning to become more spiritual and tapping into your spirituality. There are things that you can really get into that are not really there. It's frowned upon through the church because they call it secular, or it's just forbidden, and that's tuning into the vibrations of the universe. 369 is the universe. 432 is positive. 852, and that's opening up your eye and seeing past and through all of this. 417 is to reverse the negative impact that all these things have had on you. And 582 is for plants. So we need plants to survive within our atmosphere. And all of these other tones, which is hertz, I should call them, are vibrational through the universe to lift you up internally. Because of spirituality, they're not teaching that there's vibration that can change and alter your whole way of looking at things and feeling and being. They don't teach you that when you get in touch with nature and you get in touch with the universe and with God, that they're all one. They're teaching you that God and your spirit are two separate things, but they're one.
And see, again, you know, Leo, I remember attending a church that did just this, that talked about these things. And it was, again, different for me, not really something that I fully recognized. But I honestly think we've got to continue with this in our next show.
Because this is huge.
We were just getting into it.
Yeah. And we getting ready. They telling us we got to go.
Time is up.
Sometimes they get on my nerves, but I like them. But it's time to go. No, but we really truly have to continue this because it's so broad and it's so deep. And I think it would definitely. I don't think it. I know that it would definitely help others to see and understand what they can do or how things can move and transform into their lives.
Absolutely. Bringing this all to one, right? Bringing it back to one and really how the church can be really involved in this, especially in terms of enlightening on these levels. I think this is just amazing. So I'm ready to hear these other points. So we got through point 1 in terms of spirituality and spiritual growth. So we will continue with this next week on Black Portal Power.
Yes. You are listening to Black Portal Power on BSB Radio. Open your mind.
Free your soul.
For the portal is always open.
As I indulge in nightly conversations with the universe, I ask questions like, what is the purpose of Lucifer? What do you prefer? Enlightenment or soul liberation? What is your inspiration? Is this experience just a simulation? I know life is a maze, but life is amazing. I'm just going through phases, living life in the matrix. I know life is a maze, but life is amazing. I'm just going through stages, living life in the matrix. Yeah. Instagrams, anomalies, daffodils, and bumblebees, astronomy, trigonometry. When I die, will my karma really come from me? Metaphysics, quantum physics, a little science, and some religion, philosophy. All these prophecies, does it profit me? I know life is a maze, but life is amazing. I'm just going through phases, living life in the matrix. I know life is a maze, but life is amazing. I'm just going through stages, living life in the matrix. Yeah. Genocides and Twitter pages, dualities and limitations, iPhones, innovation, imitation, ancient civilizations, stimulation, simulation, generations, in the matrix. It's all a play, it's all a maze, it's all amazing. I know life is a maze, but life is amazing. I'm just going through phases, living life in the matrix. I know life is a maze, but life is amazing. I'm just going through stages, living life in the matrix. Yeah.
You look at our computing power today, and you say, I have the power to program a world inside of a computer. Well, imagine in the future where you have even more power than that. And you can create characters that have, for example, free will, or their own perception of free will. So this is a world, and I program in the laws that govern that world. That world will have its own laws of physics and chemistry and biology. Now, you're a character in that world that you think you have free will. You say, I want to invent a computer. So you do. Hey, I want to create a world in my computer. And then that world creates a world in its computer. And then you have simulations all the way down. Lay out all these universes and throw a dart. Which of these universes are you most likely to hit? The original one that started it, or the countless simulations daughter simulations that unfolded thereafter. You're gonna hit one of the simulations.
I know life is a maze, but life is amazing. I'm just going through stages, living life in the